I woke up to the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the sterile scent of bleach and plastic. The room was quiet, too quiet. I reached for my phone on the side table, blinking away the lingering dizziness from the anesthesia. No new messages. Refreshed the screen twice. Nothing. Just the same 3 calls from yesterday, all unanswered. Ethan had always been busy. That's what he said when I reminded him about my surgery last week. "Mom, I'm drowning in deadlines. But of course, I'll check in." I hadn't expected him to hold my hand through recovery. I just thought, no, I believed he'd at least call. The nurse peeked in with a gentle smile, adjusting the IV drip. "How are we feeling today, Ms. Dawson?" I tried to smile. Like someone took a hammer to my side and then stitched me up as an afterthought. She chuckled softly. "That's gallbladder surgery for you. Any family coming today?" I hesitated. My eyes flicked to the phone again. Still nothing. I cleared my throat. "My son, he must be swamped. He'll come tomorrow." "He always does." The nurse nodded sympathetically, patting my hand. "Let me know if you need anything." When the door closed behind her, I exhaled slowly, staring at the dull ceiling tiles. I tried to remember the last time Ethan and I had spent more than 10 minutes together without him glancing at his phone. Maybe his college. Graduation? No. He had left right after the ceremony to catch a flight with his girlfriend. I had raised him alone. Cooked through colds, walked him to school when our old car broke down, stayed up late sewing hems for extra money, sold my wedding ring to buy him his first laptop, skipped dinner some nights so he could have seconds. I never saw it as sacrifice. I called it love. He always thanked me, sent heart emojis, bought me lotion on Mother's Day. But somewhere along the line, the space between us grew, and I never noticed until it echoed. The nurse brought my dinner tray at 6. I wasn't hungry. I peeled the lid off the mashed potatoes just to have something to do. The gelatin wobbled in its little plastic cup, untouched. By 9, the hallway lights dimmed. Still no call. I opened Ethan's contact again. My thumb hovered over the screen, then I put the phone down. Maybe tomorrow he'll come. He always does. Or at least he used to. 3 days passed, each one slower than the last. The nurses came and went, checking my vitals, changing my dressings, offering soft encouragement in practiced tones. But all I really listened for was the sound of the door, hoping foolishly for footsteps I'd recognize. Then on the 3rd afternoon, just as I had given up and drifted into a shallow nap, I heard it. "Mom?" I blinked. He stood at the door with a sheepish grin, holding a brown paper bag in one hand and a slightly bruised bouquet of carnations in the other. My heart did something strange, twisted, warmed, ached. "Ethan," I breathed. "You came." He walked in like nothing was wrong. "Of course I did. I've just been slammed at work, didn't even have time to breathe." He kissed my forehead, placed the flowers in the plastic pitcher beside the sink, and unwrapped the takeout. Pad Thai. My favorite. He talked while I ate, about traffic, about office politics, about a coworker who was cheating on his wife. He even made a joke about hospital food, wrinkling his nose at the untouched gelatin on my tray. I nodded, laughed a little, more than I had in months. He looked rested, softer, almost like the boy I used to know. There was even a warmth in his eyes I hadn't seen since I don't know when. And for a moment, I let myself believe it. Maybe he was just overwhelmed before. Maybe he was trying now. Maybe I was still important. Then, as he handed me a napkin, he cleared his throat. "So, Mom, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. It's nothing big, just some house stuff." I stopped chewing. He pulled a thin folder from his messenger bag and placed it gently at the foot of my bed, like he was offering me a crossword puzzle. "I've been thinking about renovating the house, finally fixing up the back room, upgrading the kitchen, maybe adding solar. But I talked to the bank, And it'd be a lot simpler if the title was under my name. Temporarily, just for processing. He smiled. A reassuring, practiced smile. You'd still live there, of course. Nothing changes for you. It's just paperwork. I stared at the folder. For the loan? He nodded. And permits. You know how they are with old houses. But I want to do this right. For both of us. I looked at him for a long time. The warmth in his voice was still there. But something behind his eyes had gone still. It wasn't anger. It wasn't cruelty. It was distance. A careful calculation. I see, I said softly. Can I have a day? Just to read it properly. I've been on meds. I don't want to miss anything. His face didn't fall, but it flickered. Of course, he said, standing up. No pressure, just let me know. And with that, he patted my shoulder and walked out, leaving the folder behind, still warm from his hands. That evening, the hospital hallways felt quieter than usual. The shift had changed. The voices had softened. Outside the window, the city hummed in low light, car headlights drifting like restless stars across the streets. I lay in bed, the folder still resting on the table beside me, unopened. I hadn't touched it since Ethan left. I told myself I was just tired, that my head wasn't clear, that tomorrow I'd read every line and I'd see for myself there was nothing to worry about. But something sat heavy in my chest. A small, dull ache, not physical, but familiar. I had felt it once before, years ago, the night I found out my husband had secretly cashed out our joint savings to fund his own exit. That same cold stillness, right behind the ribs. I reached for my phone. Carol, picked up after the second ring. You're awake, she said, voice warm and full of life, like always. I couldn't sleep, I murmured. You want to talk about it? I paused. Then, Ethan visited today. That's good, isn't it? He brought takeout, I said. And a folder. Carol didn't say anything. She waited. I told her everything. The flowers, the smile, the sudden talk about renovations, the request to transfer the house title to his name. Her silence grew longer as I spoke. When I finished, she let out a slow, deliberate breath. Maris, she said softly, listen, maybe he's being honest. Maybe. But just in case, ask him to include a clause that if he tries to sell the house, it reverts back to your name. I frowned. Would that even hold? It's not that complicated. A reversion clause. Legal enough to cause trouble. If he's really planning to renovate, it won't matter to him, right? I didn't answer right away. I hated the way suspicion felt in my mouth, like a sour taste I hadn't earned. He said I'd still live there, that nothing would change. Carol's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Then there's no reason he should refuse, right? I closed my eyes. My heart hurt in a quiet, unfamiliar way, not from betrayal, from the possibility of it. Okay, I said at last. I'll ask him tomorrow. And for the first time in a long time, I dreamed not of the past, but of locks, of doors and of keys I might still hold. The next morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. No takeout this time, no flowers, just a coffee cup in his hand and that same messenger bag slung over his shoulder. He walked in like he had somewhere else to be. Morning, Mom, he said, setting the cup on the side table. Vanilla latte, I remembered. I sat up slowly. My body still ached from the stitches, but it was the weight in my chest that pulled hardest. I made a few notes, I said, reaching over to the folder. About the agreement, he raised an eyebrow. Okay. I'd like to add a clause, I said gently, not meeting his eyes. Just something simple. If the house is ever sold, it comes back to my name, automatically. You know, just to make sure I'm not left without a home. Ethan blinked. The pause between us stretched thin. Then he smiled, tight, polite. Sure, whatever gives you peace of mind. He took the folder, added the clause without comment, and handed it back. Initial here, and sign at the bottom. I hesitated for a heartbeat. Then I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. The signature looked smaller than I remembered. There, I said, handing it over. Ethan slid the papers into his bag with a satisfied nod, stood, and took a long sip of coffee. Then, just as he reached the door, he paused. Oh, one more thing, he said, as if it were an afterthought. I've already scheduled movers for Monday. They'll help you transition into the senior living facility I mentioned. You'll like it. Quiet, clean, decent food. I stared at him. What? My voice barely rose above a whisper. He turned back, his expression no longer warm or rehearsed. It was efficient, cold. You'll be more comfortable there, Mom, and I need the house cleared so renovations can start. Contractors are lined up already. It's moving fast. But I thought you said that you'd still live there? He cut in. Technically you will, just not now. Once the renovations are done, we can talk again. But for now, the best thing for both of us is for you to rest and let me handle things. He glanced at his watch. Anyway, I've got to run. I'll email you the moving details. Nurses will help you pack. And just like that, he walked out. The room felt colder when he was gone, as if he'd taken the heat with him and left me sitting in the truth. He never planned for me to stay. He needed my name on the line. That was all. I sat still for a long time, staring at the door. In my mind, his voice echoed again, quiet, clinical, and final. Great. I've already scheduled movers. Ethan moved quickly, too quickly. 3 days after I was discharged, still bruised and stiff, I sat in the common lounge of the senior facility with my coat buttoned to my chin. My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from Carol, short and sharp. Listed the house. I blinked. Read it again. I had asked Carol to stop by the old place, just in case. She was the one person I trusted to walk past the life I used to have without flinching. And there it was, our home, my home, now up for sale. Online, bright, glossy photos. Kitchen cropped just so. Description boasting, prime location, ownership ready to transfer. The asking price was just low enough to guarantee a bidding war. Ethan wasn't just flipping the deed, he was setting it. On fire. My stomach dropped, but not from shock, from confirmation. He never cared about renovations, never cared about doing it right. He just wanted out of the pit he dug, whatever hole he was hiding. I clicked on the agent's name. It was real, a reputable firm. Viewings already scheduled. He hadn't even waited a full week. I called my lawyer, Mrs. Geller, the moment the nausea passed. She listened, quietly, then said, "Send me the documents you signed. All of them." I did. By the next morning, her email subject line read, "Clause triggered, legal response in motion." The clause we had added, Carol's idea, was clear. If Ethan attempted to sell or transfer the property to any third party, the title would automatically revert to me. Not maybe. Not later. Immediately. Apparently, he hadn't read the fine print, or worse, he didn't think I'd enforce it. By midday, the sale listing vanished. A quiet withdrawal, no explanation, but the damage was done. That same evening my phone rang, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then another, then another. I checked my inbox. 6 new emails from Ethan. The last subject line read, UI. Tricked me. I didn't open any of them, Carol called instead. He's panicking, she said. I heard through a friend at the bank, he's got credit card debt up to his ears. 2 cash advance loans, gambling apps. He thought he could fix it with a quick sale. I closed my eyes. In my chest, something settled. Not joy, not even satisfaction, just relief. I hadn't outsmarted him. I had protected myself. Finally. And for once, I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. I never wanted it to come to this, even after the house listing, the lies, the move into this quiet senior facility that still didn't feel like home. I told myself, He's desperate. He's scared. He's still my son. But then he sent another message. You don't need the house anyway. You're old. Why are you making this so hard? That was the line that did it. I forwarded it to Mrs. Geller with no additional note. She called me less than an hour later. He's violated the terms. That message alone proves intent to coerce. We're not just dealing with emotional manipulation anymore. This is fraud. I was silent. She waited. I want to move forward, I said. Do whatever you have to. The next day, she filed an emergency motion with the civil court, requesting an immediate freeze on Ethan's assets due to breach of contract and attempted fraudulent transfer. The court approved it by the end of the week. By the following Monday, the world around Ethan started shrinking. His primary bank froze his checking and savings accounts, flagged by legal notice. His pending credit line, already teetering, was officially closed. His car, leased under his business name, was towed from the office parking lot while he was inside. A colleague filmed the whole thing and uploaded it to social media, and then came the call from HR. The clause in his employment contract was clear. Any legal action relating to financial fraud, especially involving family property, must be disclosed immediately. Ethan hadn't said a word. But his employer found out anyway. Carol called me that afternoon. They're putting him on suspension. Internal investigation. Could lead to termination. I sat by the facility garden, watching two sparrows fight over a crumb near the bench. They were louder than I expected. Small, fierce, relentless. I hadn't asked for revenge. I didn't want to see him fall, but I wasn't going to cushion it either. For years, I had softened every blow for him. Paid the late fees on his student loans. Took a part-time sewing job when he quit work for 6 months to figure things out. Covered for him when his father's family asked why he missed birthdays, holidays, funerals. I gave him everything. This time. I gave him silence. No messages, no calls, just the consequences of a contract he thought he could manipulate, written by a mother who had finally stopped apologizing for being used, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was breaking something. I felt like I was closing a door that should have been shut a long time ago. He showed up at the senior facility 2 weeks later. I was sitting near the window, folding laundry. It was a quiet morning, just the hum of the heater and the distant shuffle of walkers down the hallway. When the receptionist buzzed my room, she sounded uneasy. "There's a young man here asking for you. Says he's your son." I didn't answer right away. My hands paused on a towel. I stared at the soft white fabric for a long second, then told her to send him up. He looked nothing, like the man who had walked into my hospital room with pad thai and promises. Hair unwashed, tie crooked, coat wrinkled like he'd slept in it for days. His eyes were red, not from tears, but exhaustion. The skin under them had sunk. His voice, when he opened his mouth, was ragged and shaking. "You tricked me." I raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" "You added that clause behind my back. You knew exactly what you were doing." "I did," I said calmly. "After I saw what you were doing." He clenched his fists. "You ruined me, Mom." "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." He took a step forward, and for a moment I saw it again. That little boy in 2nd grade who cried when he lost his science fair project on the bus. I had stayed up all night recreating it from memory, just so he wouldn't be embarrassed next day. "That boy was gone now. I just needed help," he said. "You didn't have to go nuclear." "And I just needed you to care," I replied. "But when I ended up in a hospital bed, you brought flowers with one hand and a legal trap with the other." He didn't have a response, just stood there, heaving, like the weight of everything had finally found its way onto his chest. "I came to ask if I can stay with you, just for a few weeks, until I find something." I stood up slowly, folded the last towel, and met his eyes. "No." His mouth dropped open. "You'd let your own son, I'd let my own son come home," I interrupted. but I don't know who you are anymore. The silence between us was final. A week later, I moved back into my house, alone. I changed the locks, planted new hydrangeas by the front door, gave the guest room a fresh coat of paint, not for him, but for me, a reading room, a sanctuary. I blocked his number, and every morning after that, I opened the windows, let the light pour in, and whispered to myself, peace isn't a gift they give back, it's the one you keep for yourself. The house is quieter now, but not empty, the kind of quiet that holds space, not absence. I hear the hum of the dishwasher, the wind brushing against the hydrangeas out front, the occasional creak of the floorboards when I walk past the hallway. Mirror. It's the same house I once shared with laughter and scraped knees, with birthday cakes and late-night study sessions, but it doesn't ache anymore. It breathes. Sometimes neighbors still ask, carefully, "How's your son?" I just smile, politely, and say he's figuring things out, because he is. And I am too. I've started baking again, reading in the afternoons without checking the time. I tend the garden in the mornings, pruning roses and planting tomatoes in pots. Last week I joined a group at the library, women, like me, who used to shrink themselves into their roles and are now reclaiming space. We drink coffee and tell the truth out loud. Someone asked me what changed. I told her, the first time he didn't visit, I made excuses. The second time he came, for my house, I made a decision. Because I did. I made a decision to stop begging to be seen. Ethan thought he knew me, thought I was too soft, too sentimental, too bound by guilt to ever say no. And maybe once I was. Maybe I stayed up too many nights justifying his distance, his silence, his cold calculations disguised as taking care of things. But motherhood isn't martyrdom, and love, real love, isn't supposed to leave you homeless when you're weak. It took a contract to protect me in the end, a single clause, a line that said, if you sell this home, it comes back to me. Not because I didn't love him, but because finally I had started loving myself more. He called it betrayal. I call it boundaries. He called it heartless. I call it survival. I still think about the little boy he once was, the one who held my hand too tightly crossing the street, the one who cried when I left him at preschool, then waved with two hands when I picked him up. But that boy disappeared long ago, and the man who took his place, he made a choice. So I made one too. I still believe in love. But now I know, love is blind. But contracts aren't.